Hi, my name is Mark Hudson, and I have been asked to speak to you about the patient experience of delirium. Um, I have had two very different experiences of delirium. One in ICU, where I spent 3 weeks between December 2015 and January 2016, and the second one as a surgical patient last year. Um, So I'll first speak about the ICU delirium because to me it is the most poignant and certainly the one that has had the biggest effect on my life. As even now, 5 years plus on, there are after effects that can be contributed to the ICU delirium. So while I was in ICU for 3 weeks, I experienced ICU delirium. My delirium consisted of me being tortured daily, being drowned, abused, having probes inserted into me, being cut open, left to bleed until the point that I was nearly dead before being brought back, being constantly under threat, constantly being abused and trying to gain information about the location of my family and trying to harm them and trying to get that information out of me, whatever way that could be. I've created a kind of pictographic slide to kind of help me show the sort of effect that it had, in the kind of visceral way that I find the most useful. So these pictures to me kind of represent what my experience in delirium was. I was being waterboarded, which can be contributed to parts of my ICU experience with my lung issues. But I firmly believe that aspects of the delirium are your brain trying to interpret the things that are happening to you, but without being aware of what is happening. So my ARDS, the building up of fluid in my lungs, was interpreted by my brain as me being waterboarded and tortured. And the sort of noise and constant talking of people around me were being contributed to being tortured and being misconstrued this way. But these pictures sort of, to me, sum up what the ICU delirium experience was like to me. And although in the sort of real world, only 3 weeks had passed while I was delirious, I believed that 7 years had passed, and that for those 7 years, I was constantly tortured and abused during those times. So I think with that sort of understanding, that you can kind of begin to understand why the psychological effects for some people after delirium are so extensive, because that level of abuse, that level of physical and psychological trauma would have an effect on a person if it was real, rather than just delirium. We would understand the after effects. So another slide from my presentation that I have is, we understand the physical scars. These are my abdominal scars. We understand those scars. So why don't we understand that after delirium, after ICU delirium, we have PTSD, we have anxiety, we have depression, we have fear that it might happen again. We have a lack of confidence because we don't know what is real, what is not, because we have lived in an experience that is detached from reality. And even though after coming out of my delirium, I was very much aware that that experience wasn't real. I still couldn't say with any confidence that what I was experiencing at that moment wasn't delirium. And that can really undermine your recovery, because if you're not sure what's happening is real, it's very difficult to engage in any sort of physical or psychological recovery. It undermined my memory, my cognition, my ability to focus. So certainly initially your worry is that, will I ever be able to get back to a sort of normal level? And then as your long-term recovery, you're wondering, will this be my new normal? Will I still have the mild cognitive and memory and focus effects? And in my experiences, you never get back to full, but you get back to close to, if you're lucky like me. So that was my experience of ICU delirium. It was very intense, very poignant, and very long lasting. It was probably started prior to my admission, and then became the full blown delirium when I was in ICU, and was probably at least 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks in length, and had a prolonged effect on me. As now 5 years on, I would say that I am almost recovered from it. So I would say that the effects of delirium aren't just the immediate. They can have a prolonged and severe effect on a person's life and quality of life. So kind of lowering it down, I would like to speak a little bit about my second delirium experience, which was while I was a surgical patient. I had an abscess under my armpit that had become septic. I had all the usual things: very high temperature, very high heart rate, and my blood pressure was lowering. I was deemed to be septic, and I had a News 2 score that was quite high, that would otherwise have required further intervention. But because I was scheduled to get surgery, it wasn't progressed further, because we would resolve it with the surgery most likely. So my second experience was very different, in that I was obviously very aware of what delirium was, having been an advocate for improving delirium care for a while. I was able to kind of notice the signs. My thinking began to slow. My ability to focus on a doctor or nurses, or my mother and father speaking to me, I was less able to stay concentrated on what was being said and follow the conversation. I was able to see my thinking slow. I was also I was not able to think properly. I wasn't able to form proper responses. My energy was much lower. I was much more tired. I didn't necessarily respond appropriately to questions. My ability to remember what had been said by the nurses and the doctors was more difficult, and I just felt that everybody else was moving so much faster than me, and my brain was just so slow, and I could feel myself just slowly getting slower and slower, and I was able to comprehend less and less. And I, at that point, knew that I must be experiencing delirium, and I knew that things like reorientation, like reminding myself. So I started reminding myself where I was. I'm at Crosshouse Hospital. I started looking at pictures of my loved ones and saying, oh, that's my mother, that's my father, or that's my niece, that's my brother, and trying to reorientate myself. And I think through doing those tools of reorientation and some other things as well, that I was able to stop myself kind of going into what I would think of as full-blown delirium, where I would have lost like the ability to tell that I was delirious. And that I found that I think that taking those steps prior to getting the anesthetic, which sedation that would have made my delirium worse, like in an ICU, that taking those steps prior, I was able to stave off the worst of this delirium. So I just wanted to use that as a sort of experience point of saying that reorientation really does work, and that if we can try to reorientate patients as soon as we notice that delirium exists in them, that it will have a much more profound effect, because prevention is better than cure. Stopping the delirium developing is better than trying to sort it once it's kind of fully established. So thank you for your time. I hope that this presentation was useful, and I just thank you all for listening, and thank you for everything you all do for the patients that have delirium under your care, and just from all of them and from me, thank you very much for all the hard work you do. Thank you.